exudate, just for people newer people that are watching? What is it? Why do we want it?
So it's basically we're exchanging, like we're giving it like sugars so that it gives us nutrients more or less. So it's a nutrient exchange, it's a sugar exchange. It's basically I'll help you if you help me. It's a symbiotic.
It's giving your plant a little bit of currency that it can trade with.
That's exactly
microbes.
I like that. A little bit of currency. That's really good. A little bit of currency to exchange with microbes. That's exactly what it is. And you have a lot of symbiotic relationships that are going down there, especially again, specifically in the ones that people mostly know are mycorrhizal ones, right? Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we talk about all things cannabis and lifestyle related. I am here with my brother, Josh, today. We're going to be doing a dual episode. You guys definitely have been enjoying those quite a bit. But before that, I wanted to have a shout out to all commercial growers that are out there. If you guys are interested in getting any of our products, you are more than welcome to reach out. We'd be more than happy to put them in your hands. We do obviously have a normal sample program for a lot of you guys that have taken advantage of that. You can always get onto our VIP growers page as well to get into some of our other things that are in our universe, which whether it's the Discord or the Jug Dealers page or the podcast or additional things in the podcast. And of course, last but certainly not least, we do have the Jug Club as well, which gets you 20% off all products all the time through our website. And we are going to have a very interesting and fun show today because we're going to talk about kind of how to get out of that salt program or that pure or that sterile program into a more organic program, which is one thing that we're a very big fan of, but also we see more and more happening out there. And in fact, we did drop, as you know, Josh, and you obviously helped us do that all the way up and get all the lists going together. But in Berlin, we dropped 3 particular products. We dropped Fertilium, we dropped Rhizium, and we dropped Slicium as a trio that can be used universally on top of all products. So big shout out to all of our European people that came through and got that package and also got some Josh D seeds. Always big shout out to Josh D.
Man, yes, yeah. I smelled that jar of that Josh D you had out there. Oh my God.
Goodness gracious. Absolutely. So shout out to Josh D. We're going to continue to do some fun things with him as well. So definitely stay posted. But yeah, man, we got a bunch of these products. So we wanted to make sure everybody we got, they got their hands on them. We could get them the information and also around here.
I was going to say, including myself, as we're rolling these out on my Instagram, I have it say Junior Jug Dealer because I run the Instagram over there. So you guys, sometimes people say, hey, Jerin. I go, I'll tell him you said hi. For my own benefit, I was like going through, it's like, I use Rhizium. It's like, what exactly? You say it's a root and shoot initiator. Like why? What's it do? So we're going to dig into all this stuff. What separates basic bitch cardboard salt weed from that new millennium Josh D weed?
And I feel like it is, I don't want to call it low hanging fruit, but I feel like right now there's a ton of people that are trying to get out of that, get out of that. They might even call that the salt box, which is a little bit of a box because they've been told.
Which is made of cardboard, ironically.
Well, and they've been told that just trust the program and things like that, you know what I mean? But we're trying to give you more terp expression. We want to give you better roots. We want to give you stronger plants and more vigorous plants overall, but obviously without throwing away your base program. So this is the one thing. We're not talking about starting over. We're not talking about throwing everything away. We're talking about keeping your base program, actually, which I don't think a lot of people say that.
No.
Most people are going to say that, if you're not doing all of our stuff, you're doing everything
New Millennium
wrong.
Has the balls to come out and just say, look, sauce your base, use what you're already using.
Sauce it up.
But add this stuff on top for the magic.
Well, that's it. And we want you to keep your consistency, whether it's a pH, things like that. You have your MPK a lot of times. And don't get me wrong, whether it's New Millennium or elsewhere, we do have full base programs. So it's not that we don't have it, but we like to show people what we can do right off the bat. And obviously, when you're also importing new products into a place like Europe, starting with some of these biostimulant based, that are quality and expression based and genetic potential based products, it can be a lot easier to put it on top of these programs as opposed to changing. And
everyone knows about New Millennium, and we're talking a little bit more about Scietetics.
Yes, we are. We are. In fact, you know what, Josh? Let's, we do have all these commercial products. I know we had a little bit of a note slightly later about this. We'll go ahead and put it out right now because it feels right. We've been talking about commercial products and that we have them available for sample and everything else.
One thing just to set the stage is one of the things that as Gabe has moved to doing commercial stuff, we've kind of realized that someone needs to be the gatekeeper with all these dispensaries and commercial facilities, these guys need to be growing the dank. The people who are in charge of growing the hundreds and hundreds of pounds of weed across this country, we need you guys to start growing the best humanly possible.
We'd love to help. We really would. And again, as you can see, we're very much about putting a few products on top of anything. If anybody gives us any kind of qualified lead, if you're working in a facility, if you run a facility, if you have any association with a facility, if your brother's got it, your uncle's got it, I'll tell you right now, I will send you the size shirt that you request along with a New Millennium hat, the gray one that I've got here, the Heather Gray, as we actually like to call it. Ooh. Well, I'll give you the hat and shirt combo for any qualified commercial lead.
So Jerin's email's right here. Hit him up.
Shoot me an email.
Yeah, get us in contact with management, ownership, anyone you think that we can help make the dank in this
and you know, and that's like we're talking about, and as we see, we are trying to help people bridge the gap. So if you're out there, help us bridge the gap. We'll help you bridge the gap. We'll help you by you helping us. All right, let's talk about bridging that gap, because there are some really great clean synthetic programs out there, but they do tend to lack a little bit of biological expression, right? And the reality is that's where we're going to work on coming in. The middle lane is what we do call synthetic. Obviously, the other would be, you know, BO, even for somebody out there, or biological, but we, you know, tend to call it organic, you know. Josh, oh my god, it's not the
funk we're looking for.
No. So what we like to say, you know, synthetic does have the horsepower. Biological has the expression and also has that ability to feed the soil, feed the rhizosphere, feed the substrate, depending on what substrate you're using. But no matter what, there's some level of, you know, cation exchange program. There's or cation exchange capacity, along with, you know, different amounts of microbial associations, depending on what, you know, what you're putting in there, but also what substrate you're using. But we are trying to bridge that gap. And we really believe that, you know, some synthetic kick right away, along with that biological expression. And again, we always talk about looking for, you know, genetic potential. And I talk a lot about, you know, it's not just about the 17 plant essential, if you will. And in fact, I think that's why salt growers tend to feel trapped a lot, right, Josh?
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, is that the 17 essential plant nutrients, everyone's selling it. You guys will always say every nutrient program wants you to win. Things are getting more and more and more basic. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but in this modern world where we're trying to break out and become oil farmers and that terp expression, I think it's more important. So
and if you're trying to, here's the thing, if you're trying to separate yourself, you definitely need to do something else. You're absolutely right, Josh. And it's something I do. I preach it all the time. There's not a single company out there that's trying to give you bad nutrients.
Right.
The reality is, you know, a lot of these salt-based, completely just your plant 17 essential, they're going to be very measurable. They're going to be very repeatable. They're clean in your nutrient lines, in your irrigation lines.
Even home growers, right? Like, you know,
it's understandable. Yeah. The reality is that's not how plants grow up. That's not how plants, you know, came up from an evolutionary standpoint. When you're talking about what was available to them, well, it wasn't just these, you know, pure, 17 plant essential nutrients. So I really like, and what I find really interesting, and what we talk about a lot, not only in this program, but as a company, we like to talk about what about the plant beneficial stimulants and possibly nutrients, but a lot of times it's out of the quote unquote nutrient world, right? So, and that's why the word, you know, well, yeah, biostimulant even, you know, but let's get into that.
And that was because out of the 17 plant essentials, that's if that's what's essential,
right?
What is the secret sauce? Why am I always hearing biostimulants? What does that even kind of mean?
Well, and here's the things, you know, the reality is it can mean a lot of different things, because it can mean everything from enzymes to sugars to natural PGRs to all kinds of different things, right? Okay. And again, but what they aren't typically, because a lot of them are microbes and different things as well, they're not typically as clean or as what people look at as consistent, but really it's this irrigation world. And again, I do want to make sure that everybody knows we like to start with these projects and our products, and we are highlighting these particular three in particular because we did do the European drop on them, but they're also some of our newest products here. Yes. And we did just start sending them out to some of our, most consistent and top supporters that we have within our juggernaut world as well. So
we don't do it for fun. We already got enough jugs that we're trying to sell. If we're bringing on 3 new ones, it's because they're important. And I really believe in it. One of the things we're going to talk about today kind of changed my growing experience for the rest of my life. And this is the new technology of it. So I think you're going to want to stay tuned for most of this.
And
trust me.
Here's the thing. Let me end the salt thing by saying this, and why I think that they feel trapped is because of the consistency. But the one complaint is always what, Josh?
Just that expression
and
terp
quality,
expression,
right?
Quality.
It photos really, really well, right? And it's a vigorous plant.
What you just said there is the most important thing. You're stunting on the Instagram. You're looking good. But then you meet up with GRAMBO or Jerin, maybe at the DGC Cup, and you're like, try this. And then we go, yeah.
That's what I'd like to call real weed,
versus like, damn, we're looking for a damn weed.
So, and that's why I also say, and that's why I think Organic is very powerful, because you don't have to run away or throw away your old program. What we're doing is just trying to stack on top of it and give you some more quality, give you some more vigor. And genetic expression is one of the things I always like to point out. Do we know what genetic expression really is? Do we know what the top is? No, but that's what we're shooting for, right? It's kind of one of those things. I like to say it's one of those things, Josh, if you shoot for the moon and miss, but you end up in the stars, well, you're still pretty damn high. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about. So, the moon being what true genetic potential is, and, somewhere ending up there is still pretty darn cool, right?
Stars would be that they're farther.
but what's really missing? Depth, complexity. Sometimes it's really, you can't even put your finger on it. And that's why I talk about being an oil farmer, because sometimes, the terpenes, some of these things aren't even testable. Some of them are. Can we test for terpenes? Can we test for THC? Mm-hmm. Can we have people do personal consumption tests? Yes, but I feel like it's the layers are left out. The complexity is left out. One way our friend Rasta Jeff, shout out to Rasta Jeff, has always, kind of explained is like THC is like the original shoot off of a firework, right? The part that you don't really see a whole lot, just that little streak up. And it is how high it gets, but everything else is the sparkles and the actual stuff that's coming down, right? And that's all the terpenes and the additional cannabinoids and everything else.
Sometimes the best herb, it's like a subtleness as well. They're like that Josh D bud that's out, that NewMill bud. It's not necessarily just like black, like whoa, that's so loud. It's got a subtleness to it.
Well, and that's why I think sometimes when you get almost an overexpression on certain terpenes, right?
And you wouldn't think that would be a problem, right?
No, but if you're bringing everything out independently, well, and that's why we look at some of the products, and really the original, genetic expressor, or you will, our phenotypic expressor that we put out on the market is Winter Frost. And we have a ton of Winter Frost users, and we talked a lot about it recently, so we won't go into a lot of it, but that's the same thing. We've always talked about that. And we want products that individualize, not homogenize, right? Because there are products out there that will homogenize, but then again, once it homogenizes, like you say, you lose those layers and that complexity. And that's where it just becomes boring. And truthfully, I feel like that's where the real smoking experience or consumption experience, regardless of how you consume it, really comes. But when people really think about a biostimulant,
yes,
Josh, what do you think of? And again, being a junior,
when I hear biostimulant,
what do you think?
I immediately start thinking products, not process. I start thinking of I could get some alfalfa meal, and I can get some of this stuff. Kelp is great, right?
For sure.
And so I know the things that get me the things,
right?
But here at Jug Dealers, we try to go a layer deep, teach you why you're using something, not just what to use.
And unfortunately, a lot of times people think clogged emitters, people think dirty tanks. They think these things, right, Josh? Because in reality,
yes,
you might see that. And that's why we also like people, depending on what they're running, like for example, with Carbonaria, to actually hand water that in once a week if you're running smaller emitters, right? Or even drop the usage rate down instead of 5 mils a gallon to 2 mils a gallon.
Because that's pure just bacteria,
exactly.
Like all that bio life. It
loves it. Yeah. It's going to love it,
gasoline.
Right? And I mean, so I use the it's like a gasoline. Let's say that. Let's not confuse people here, Josh.
No.
But the reality is, like, I like to say that biofilms is really just a bunch of bacteria partying together, right? So in fact, in that sense, right, it's like it's good, but to the eye it looks bad. It's not bad to the plant. Now to the irrigation system, it may be a problem. So, but even something like having a larger gallon per hour emitter, right? So doing maybe instead of a quarter gallon per hour per emitter, doing a 2 gallon per hour per emitter and running it from different lengths, things like that. Again, this is not an irrigation episode, so I don't want to get too lost in the sauce there. But let's talk a little bit about what makes some of the products like we have, starting with Fertilium, differently. So Fertilium, first off, what we're talking about, again, these are not raw organic products, although there is a lot of different natural things in there, and they're also not NPK products. So it is, I like to call it very simply simply a biocatalyst. And what it is, it's building blocks more than anything else. And so even though it's dark, the fact that it's used at 1 mil a gallon, you don't see this kind of organic sludge. It's not, just sugar based. So you're not going to see those kind of things. You're not going to see staining in the tank. You're not going to see that sort of thing.
What about smells? I know with certain things.
Oh, good point.
We'll always talk about with like ruby and stuff. The nose knows. What should we look for in that?
Well, and again, everything needs to smell fresh, but you're not going to, nothing's fish, nothing's animal based. Let me be real clear about that, because a lot of people think when they think all natural, they start thinking fish and stuff like that.
It makes me sound like it's fertile.
Well, it is fertile. It smells like more like B vitamins, anything like that. A little bit of sweetness and B vitamins, stuff like that. But it's building blocks, so it's supporting the plant's internal engine. We're not feeding it the NPK, but what we're doing is we're supporting that NPK, and we're supporting the enzymatic activity within the plant itself, right? So we're helping the plant use better what it's already been fed.
Can we talk enzymatic activity? Is another thing, right? Why am I using enzymes? What the hell? What are enzymes? Why should I use them?
Well, enzymes, so first off, enzymes are actually technically a protein, right? But one of the things that's interesting about enzymes, it helps a biological process happen faster and more efficiently. So if
they are not the food. They are the thing that makes the food available.
More efficient. So I remember we had an example one time when we did an enzyme episode where it was one of those deals where it could happen, but it took like either a fraction. Remember that? Where it was the smallest fraction of a second or like 1,000 years.
It took a millisecond or 1,000 years.
So it was like, so there's a lot of things like that, where if an enzyme's not there, in theory and technically it could happen, but it's not going to happen very efficiently, right? And so that's really the biggest, that's the biggest thing. But again, keeping in mind, these are not replacing base nutrients, right? What we're doing is really putting things on and making them used more efficiently, which might even make, and a lot of times it does make it to where you're having to use less of these base nutrients as well, right? So rather than base salts, these are going to be raw building blocks, specifically for psyllium. So you've got things like amino acids, specifically L-amino acids, right? Which are going to, and those are building blocks for proteins. So if you have the building blocks there, it's kind of like showing up to a house, and if everything's there, all your 2x4s, all your planks, all your, all the concrete, everything's there. Well, now you just build it. But if it's not there, it's a bit of a law of the minimums thing again, right? So that's what fertilium, and that's why I call it a biocatalyst. It also has peptides, and again, it does have other enzymes, all kinds of microbes, things that are going to help continue to feed the soil and make. So there you can see, and L-aminos are specifically a certain form of amino acids that it's that L configuration, right? Now it has a whole lot of them, but that's one of the things that makes it a little bit more unique. And that's why we do, point that out. But these are specifically all these things that we're talking about, and the L-aminos specifically as well. They're building blocks for certain things like, guess what? Secondary metabolites, which is what we're after. So
you're going to hear us say that a lot. That's those VOCs. Those are those terpenes, those cannabinoids.
A lot of things, esters, thiols, terpenes, along with other things, is oil production. These are secondary metabolites, right? So that's, again, we're focused on producing secondary metabolites, which is what we're looking for because we are oil farmers, as opposed to making sure that we have enough nitrogen, which should already be there in a proper base program, right? That's going to be there for structure and all the other things that you need, that NPK is needed for. And if we assume that's there.
If you want to become an oil farmer, jugdealers.shop.
That's always available. Yeah.
Grab yourself an oil farmer.
So what fertilium is going to do, it's going to turn loose all these building blocks, make them available, and that turns into actual visible growth, visible vigor, and visible expression, because those builders are there. Now we can build a house, Josh. Right now we got all the materials there. We can build a house. It's time to build a house, and we're trying to keep that plant stay as efficient as possible.
Building the house. It's a perfect way to look at it. What is a house? It's a room. It's pipes, it's plumbing, and it's
2x4s, it's paint, it's stucco.
You could live in a shack,
right?
And paint it nice on the outside, or you could live in a Synganic mansion.
So yes, exactly. You can live in a Synganic mansion that has all the expressions. So, so again. Excuse me there. Simple version, the salts obviously provide the minerals. Fertilium helps activate the plant's ability to use them. It supports uptake deficiency. It helps reduce wasted energy. And it gives the plant biological signals instead of just mineral inputs. Because we can give mineral inputs all day, but if you don't, plant doesn't know what to do with them.
Right.
What are we going to do?
And so when are we adding that in? So this is because fertilium's the newest one to my garden.
Fertilium is the newest one. And that is 1 mil per gallon. And it's very concentrated, literally used veg and flour. It's so easy to use. You put immediately on top of any base nutrient program. So right there, immediately, you're starting to become more Synganic, right? Now, we're going to give you the trio to really try and round this whole thing out. But keep in mind, any one of these products that we're going over today, Rising, Fertilium, or Slicium, are worth putting in your garden independently. But obviously, obviously the real secret is putting them all together because they are different products. And that's our whole point of trying to break them down for you, because when you look on the back of a bottle, sometimes it's not the easiest to really know what the heck is going on.
Sometimes
right?
legally they can't.
There's some things, man. You know what I mean? So there's some good things. So
like, for example, they don't like the government doesn't acknowledge humic acid or fulvic acid.
Right. And or if you do, you have to really have high end testing to make that happen. But as a normal, yes, you're completely right, Josh.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, a salt program is like feeding the plant, the ingredients individually, but we're trying to cook a meal, and fertility really helps that meal be cooked because it's going to give you a lot of those other building blocks and everything else that, again, make everything buildable, right? So that's what we're doing. We're trying to cook meals here. We're trying to build houses. We're not trying to just give you a pile of independent pieces that don't do anything, right? So anyway, earlier we talked a little bit about amino acids. Should we talk a little bit more how they are building blocks and really what they're doing? I mean, we kind of talked they are protein, stress response, things like that.
It's more of that sort of stuff that everyone knows they're using it. Everyone knows they have it in their mix, but I don't know if everyone knows exactly
Well, and
why.
also, understand, because I think some people will say, hey, you know what? But can a plant make proteins? Yes, it can. But guess what? What if we give it to him and it doesn't have to do it himself? So a lot of things that we're doing is we're trying to lower the activation energy that a plant has to do it itself.
That was the quote I was going to say that from you and Gabe, the activation energy. A plant only has so much energy available to it.
Right.
And we can't just stack more nutrients on top of it. There is a ceiling to that.
There is.
So if you can chop out any of the things that it has to do that's why we say bioavailable.
Correct.
That's why biology is so important. All that biology is doing all that work that the plant roots don't have to.
And that's the thing. And that's why when we talk about pre-digested and available, right? Because even in organic form, that's what is organic? It means carbon-based or not carbon-based. If it's carbon-based, it's not a plant uptakeable. So plants actually take up an inorganic plant available form that is not carbon-based because it's inorganic. Sorry if I'm talking too fast, but I've said this a lot of times.
The next time someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm just going to go, bro, I'm pre-digested.
Yeah, I'm pre-digested.
I'm ready to go.
But if I have that ready to go, right, and it's not saying that organic isn't good, but it's going to take time to make it into a plant available form. So like even when we talk about Slicium and being bioavailable because it's actually in the correct form, right? But the reality is we're wanting, no matter what, the energy and what we can help the plant do is for that energy it does have go towards growth, go towards flower development and overall performance. And that's the point. If we're giving them the stuff that they don't have to make everything themselves because they're already pretty amazing being autotrophs and making their own food, that's already pretty amazing. If we can help them out and do it, and give them more vigor, better posture, tighter growth, and it's really that plant praying look, like that's the kind of stuff we're trying to do.
All right. So if anyone is worried about, especially once again, shout out to all those commercial growers. If you can set us up with management or anything, get that t-shirt package.
Get that t-shirt, get the hat. It has a gray hat. Maybe I'll even sign them or text something in there. You don't know.
I love that. And then you become a part of the Jug Dealers family. That is the biggest thing that keeps this show going.
Indeed. It's the support from you guys.
Yes. So thank you guys on that. But yes, people are worried about the cleanliness of it.
There are some grower questions.
Is there anything at the home grower level that people should be concerned about? Because it seems like it's way easier if you're hand watering or anything. But
no. It's definitely going to be fine to put on top of it.
Let's talk home growers for a sec.
Yes, it's even at that 1 mil a gallon. Obviously, a liter is going to do you 1,000 gallons worth, so you'll have it around for a little while. But it runs clean, it mixes clean because it's so concentrated. And again, it isn't just pure sugar base. It's not going to make your tank gross. It's not going to stain everything out, anything like that. If you get a little staining in your tank from something that it's not the biggest deal, folks. So, we really are trying to use these things though, as that again, as we're talking about as a bridging the gap, we're trying to use these things as a bridge between sterile salts and biological expression. And what we're bringing to the table is biological expression. So understand if things are a little darker or maybe even smell a little bit different, but your nose does knows if things smell bad, if they smell necrotic, right? And that's what you're going to see.
Does it smell like death?
Death. I mean, we know the smell of death. If you go by and something's rotting on the side of the road, if you open up some rotting milk, right? So just So just keep that. So
we think of fertilium like the bridge, and
yes.
And now we're getting to one of my favorite ones that I'm excited to talk more about is the rhizium, the root and shoot initiator.
Yeah. So like if we think about fertilium as a plant engine, let's talk about it. Let's go underground. Because really, the top of the plant is the engine in the sense that it does have to create the carbohydrates, the sugar. That's the autotroph. That's the plant, that's the food production part of the plant.
I've been thinking it's like plants are essentially sugar factories, right?
They are sugar factories, and that's exactly what we talked about one whole episode.
It kind of changed my whole thinking about gardening with this one. So we're trying to make sugars not only for the plant, for the rhizosphere,
right? And even what's like, if we think about what's plant food, even all the things we're talking about as plant food aren't really plant food because they're not eating it.
Go back, watch the old episodes. When Jerin and Gabe started talking about it, blew my mind. Plant food isn't plant food.
And I really look
at
really, right.
And water,
air and water and the sun, and like to make, to make
so
carbohydrates.
Just like we can live without vitamin C, but it's not going to be good for us. Eventually it will take us down.
Yeah. You're gonna
Same thing. All those non-essential things.
But I definitely like to look at roots as, kind of the electrical system, because there's so much communication going down there between root exudates and all kinds of different associations that you have with mycorrhizal associations and bacterial associations. Like that's the electrical system. That's
it's like the junction box.
Yeah. And that's where, in my mind and really where a lot of it's been proven is where a lot of the communication. So that's where I kind of like to say electrical system is, and it also is kind of tied to electroconductivity, right? Which
literally.
Literally.
That's why that analogy hit me. It's like,
and that's
not even an analogy. It's kind of just literally.
Yeah, that's the thing. So anyway, let's talk rhizium. And it is called rhizium because it is about the rhizosphere. It's actually a very, 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 it's about a very specific part of the rhizosphere. If you actually look up the definition of rhizosphere itself too, Josh, I think a lot of times people think that rhizosphere is all the substrate. It's everything below ground. No. But in truth, it's a very small layer that's right up against the roots. And what rhizium focuses on is the rhizo sheath, which
as big as the medium versus the rhizosphere to the rhizo sheath
is even smaller. Yes. Tiny. But that's actually where, root hairs or follicles, where they come in contact with soil particles themselves.
And we should say, just because I always like to take the student role. I always love this idea of the hairs. The root tips are the things that are creating that. That's why people like, I like the fabric pot. We've talked about the pros and cons. Once again, go back and watch our watering episode. We talk about pros and cons of different pots and everything.
But I think, and part of the problem is when you do have a heavy salt system, I feel like you're burning off sometimes some of these root follicle hairs, right? Because they're very delicate, right? So if you're running too high EC, if you're getting things hot, and that's where sometimes things come and lockout happens and stuff. Well, is it really lockout, or is that just something that we call that's like lack of surface area to uptake as much as they need to, so it becomes their minimum?
Okay.
I don't know. Just came off the top of my head.
Makes sense to me.
You know what I mean? But when we talk about these things, sometimes these things come to your head. But again, this whole clean and sterile all the time, I don't think that advocates to a healthy rhizosphere that has all these, like I mentioned, all these different associations with all kinds of other protozoa and microbes and there's so much going on there. I mean, there's literally little hydrogen pumps, little proton pumps that'll pump out little hydrogens to exchange cations.
Do yourself a favor and look up proton pumps and just know that that's what's happening when you're growing weed.
So, I mean, like the thing is like the plant is also like, and I think sometimes too with salts, and maybe this is good and bad, but it comes very mechanical and it gets the plants heavily depending on like a more of a perfect irrigation timing, a perfect EC and perfect moisture content and perfect everything. But when you do have some of these biostimulants and biologicals in there, it does help buffer some of these things, whether it's, buffer it from irrigation pressures like desiccation pressure, you know what I mean? Drought pressure, things like that, or even pressure from the sun. If you are growing outside or in a greenhouse situation, like you'll see from even Slicium, things like that. But we've always heard healthy roots, healthy fruits, right? And it's kind of like, dude, if your roots aren't doing it, and we've even had before, and I've had it, I'm sure everybody has, a rather healthy looking plant, right, Josh, that like once it came down to it, it just didn't produce fuck all. It didn't really do what it's supposed to do. And then when it came down to it, you pull it out of the pot, it's like, there's nothing there.
Yeah, the root ball is,
there's nothing there.
It's nothing but dirt in there. So you would say it's the roots and shoot initiator. Let's start with the roots. I think everyone can kind of wrap their head around that. And I'm excited to talk about the shoots here in a second. So let's start with roots. What's rhizium doing for your roots? And then we'll talk about what's
well, I mean, obviously, white roots are good, but we also do want active root function. And at times when you're using different problems, like our products, let's say you are using like a compost tea or something like that, you might see some darker things, and you are going to see with some of these like more natural products, but obviously white roots are always great to see. And I'll be honest with you, you're going to see a lot of white roots because it's popping out all those root hairs like we talk about.
Right.
And that those are going to do the exudate signaling, which is nutrient exchange, right? And that's why you have mycorrhizals, because that's creating even more.
And then once again, just to define the term exudate, just for people newer people that are watching, what is it? Why do we want it?
So it's basically we're exchanging, like we're giving it like sugars so that it gives us nutrients more or less. So it's a nutrient exchange, it's a sugar exchange. It's basically, I'll help you if you help me. It's a symbiotic.
It's giving your plant a little bit of currency that it can trade with.
That's exactly
microbes.
I like that. A little bit of currency. That's really good. A little bit of currency to exchange with microbes. That's exactly what it is. And you have a lot of symbiotic relationships that are going down there, especially again, specifically in the ones that people mostly know are mycorrhizal ones, right? Which there's actually different species that work with different plants. I'm sure a lot of people know that. Maybe you don't. I think Glomus interices is kind of the one that's been most closely associated with cannabis.
Renamed to like Fagarella seeds or something?
I don't even know.
It got renamed to something with FAG as the starting, and then we just know.
Hey,
Glomus, baby.
Yeah, Glomus. So what Rhizium is doing differently is it is focusing on that rhizosheath area. So there are things that focus on the rhizosphere, but the rhizosheath itself in that root follicle area, that is very different. And really, as a secondary kind of action, it does have that shoot growth as well. So obviously we call it Rhizium, but it is a root and shoot product as well, which means it's focusing on both root production and shoot production, which there is obviously, a bit of a match there too. Like for example, the roots are typically only growing out to the crown of the edge of the leaves, right? So there is an association between the roots and the shoots as well.
And so is it kind of, we can think of it the way that like a conditioner. I always think of like the humics and the fulvics is like a conditioner, kind of buffering things up.
Well, and that's the thing. I think in general, people should look at the rhizosphere. If you have a healthy rhizosphere, it's going to help buffer a lot of things. It's going to help buffer nutrient stress. It's going to help buffer drought stress, things like that, right? And obviously, if you have more surface area and you have more, root zone, you're going to have more nutrient uptake, right? So I think that's really the biggest point is, right? It is supporting that rhizosphere activity, but supporting it in a very, very specific way that increases nutrient uptake via increasing surface area.
Okay, so then as we're moving to the from the roots to the shoots, is it just kind of A then B? It's helping the roots out so that helps the shoots, or it's actually independently doing something better
I would say,
the biomass?
I would say the former rather than the latter, because what it's doing is creating that additional nutrient uptake, which means that now it's going to have those more building blocks so that it can have that, that additional production up top.
That makes sense. Because I was wondering, it's like, does it got two modes of action? What's it doing?
I mean, that's the thing. So many things do it. Like they seem to be even like a dual mode of action because they work so interdependently.
Like a harmony.
Yes. And it's like if with one, you don't have the other, and sometimes they do. And I think even in plants, it can be tough to even prove, what was it, did the chicken come before the egg kind of stuff.
And then, designing experiments to prove these things are near impossible sometimes.
Right. Absolutely. So I think we already, really defined, did a good job talking about, what the rice are. Obviously, Rhizium is making roots bigger in general, but it's more about the root hairs, which are root follicles.
And that was something we wanted to talk about when we were smoking earlier, is the surface area.
Yeah.
I know certain compounds that, maybe young people take, chop it up. It makes it, why do you chop it up? Increase more the surface area. Yeah. That equates for
a lot of things.
Everything.
Yeah.
Surface area is everything. And so creating it's like we talk about with like putting, maybe people used to use a lot of biochar.
Yep.
And the reason that was so great is because like inside there's so many little folds and little places that
and places,
surface area
exactly for things to attach onto that then become more available.
And so how does this apply to what we're doing in our grow?
I mean, at the end of the day, more surface area,
and we're talking about of the roots,
of the roots, of the root zone, more root hairs, things. It's more nutrient exchange, more water uptake, better dry back tolerance, more buffering, more contact with the medium itself, which is exactly where we're getting the nutrients, right? Okay. And just I would say at the end of the day, more resilience in general too. So this is a stress tolerance too. So, but again, isn't drought a stress as well? So if you say these things, but again, we are doing these drybacks as well. And the drybacks, are important, but we do want to pull air into these root zones, right? But again, you want everything moving like a top. It's got to operate like a machine. Everything can be looked at as a law of the minimums of sorts, right? So, and that's now we can get into this thing about calling crop steering, things like that. Would it, and I feel this question coming on. on. Well, would that help in crop steering? The short answer is yes, of course.
I would say that, in fact, like this is the secret to crop steering.
Right.
Crop steering can't exist if adding stress is in.
If you have
decimate your plant.
If you have a stronger root zone, is going to give you more steering range.
This gives
if you want to look at it like
to
that.
Play. You can't even play. You can't even sit at the table.
Right. Well, and you can definitely push the plant harder with less of a risk of crashing. I can promise you that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the plant does, you could look at it like that for sure. More roots, more capacity to be pushed in different directions.
I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to have a good chassis, right? Even though we don't have Gabe. Do we introduce Gabe? Or
we actually did.
We don't have Gabe.
I took time to set Gabe up.
So he would say that would be like having a badass chassis under the car. I believe that
Gabe's car analogies are on
He loves his car analogies, and they are good. They are definitely good. So we know that, again, fertilium does separate that biological engine. We just talked about that Rhizium is obviously the chassis. So, what are we,
we said 100% home growers, 100%. No downside. What about commercial growers? Is this a commercial grower?
These are all commercially viable. And you'll see that they're all at 1 to 2 mils a gallon. So they are all at commercial grade concentrations as well. And that's something we did on purpose because we wanted to put biology back into what we really saw as a lot of people in these commercial grows doing nothing but salt and losing the expressions. Right? Good looking herb, but it wasn't smacking. It wasn't doing what it needed to do.
New millennium. We put the biology back in bud.
Well, so yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
Write it down.
Oh my God. Write that down. So I believe that fertilium really wakes up the plant and again, makes that house build possible, really helps cook the meal like we were talking about, Josh, right? Rhizium is going to wake up that root zone and again, be able to provide by opening up that root zone, providing the other building blocks, right? So we're continually to try and give these building blocks, right? And even if we're not giving it to him ourselves, we're trying to give it more of an opportunity to do that. So how do we protect all the structure though? How do we do that?
Now we get to my favorite one.
How do we do that?
One of the products that changed my whole game in gardening. I hated the silica dance. I put the silica in. Then I put my A and B in. I'd watch all the nutrient fall out.
No.
So to be honest with you, towards the end of my commercial growing career, I kind of just stopped using silica. I was a scrogger. I didn't need it. Sure. So let's talk Slicium, the thing that legitimately changed my growing game.
And I do, and one of the things I like to talk about is just the fact that, really what we had originally available was potassium silicate. That's not even the right form. And that's why so many of these things happen. Right. So, that's what ended up being a lot of times, when it fell out. But Slicium is a monoorthosilicic acid that's readily bioavailable. And the reason is because it stabilizes actually as monomers, dimers, and trimers. So very, very small molecules. So that can be uptaken readily right away in mass flow, which is in water, right? That is then taken directly into the roots and deposited into the cell walls. And the rest of it's transpired as H2O. If you look at the molecule itself, you go, oh, geez, that's out, because that's really all it is. It's silicium and hydrogen and water. So it's even for a non-chemist like myself, it's very easy to kind of see and understand. The other important part about that, when it's so small like that, too, it's actually able to get into the pores through the waxy cuticle layer of the plant. So it's actually suitable for foliar feeding as well.
That's what literally changed my entire existence. Being able to foliar silica in, it changed my whole game.
But the fact that you don't see any weird reactions. It kind of looks like Sprite going into the solution. Obviously, always add it to your tank first before anything else, even before a CalMag, anything like that. And I usually let it go and kind of be able to disperse through the whole tank because there is a chemical reaction going on there. And it is what I like to say, conditioning the water for better uptake, right? But you want to let that happen a little bit.
On the practical side, I swear, when I started using this, it reminded me when I'd go to Hawaii or Jamaica even, and plants almost look fake. There's like this waxy kind of thickness to the leaves, Oh, yeah. And literally when I started foliaring silica, the silicium, it made my plants look like they were growing Hawaiian. It was insane.
I like how you put that, growing Hawaiian, because that's very true. It looks a little bit shiny like I do. It's 100 degrees a day again in Denver. It's hot in hell in this theater. But anyway, in this studio, we need to get an AC. But anyway, a lot of, and hopefully not as many as used to, but I do think that a lot like you, Josh, that a lot of people are turned off by it. But these unstable potassium silicate products that are out there, right?
100%.
They can spike that pH hard. They can be difficult to mix. You can see fallout precipitation, things like that. They just became a bit problematic. So, it's like, long story short, people looked at it and go, well, silica's got to be good, right? But since it didn't work with their program, I feel like a lot of people dropped it out.
Right. It's like the question, it's like the plant doesn't care between the two different ones. Technically, it doesn't care, but you care because of what the plant's going to do with it.
Exactly. And can a plant use it right now? And we're dealing with an annual plant. Can it use it immediately, or is it something that it can use over time? If you want to put a potassium silicate onto your trees and shrubs, I would say, sure, go ahead. Because it's going to be much better on
because you got time and a hell of a lot of biological life to break it down. It's going to
break that down.
Because the plant can't break. It's relying on something outside of itself to even uptake.
Exactly. And that's even with the whole organic form thing, right? The plant's not doing it itself. It is relying on outside sources, right? Relying on microbes, on biology, actually, to break that down and make it available.
A lot of organic plant food is rock dust, and these things that are literally
it's a rock mineral. It's mined, right? So a lot of times, rather than waiting for these things to be converted, and I think it's a lot like our enzyme, analogy, right? It's possible, but is that really what you want? Especially, is it an available or do you want a silica or an available silica?
Yeah, and that's how a lot of these companies survive, is on the bottle they can write these things that aren't lies.
Right.
They're not lies.
Now, okay, so we talked about the thing. So we know that ours is very uptakeable, bioavailable, all that thing. So what does silicon do? Well, not rocket science here.
I suppose that's a good place to start too. Silica.
What does it
silicon.
Do? Yeah, silicon. Yes. Just like Silicon Valley, silicon.
And we have it in our skin.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
So it helps strengthen cell walls. That obviously translates to stronger stems. It can help obviously reduce. What I like to say is it reduces all abiotic and biotic stresses. Which
are stresses from outside of the plant and stresses inside the plant.
Well, and really what it's biological stresses. So whether it be pest diseases, things like that, or stresses from like the wind, desiccation, drought, things like that. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So it's like whether it's and that would be a abiotic stress. Biotic stress is being, pest diseases, things like that. But you're going to get more rigid structure, obviously, better leaf integrity, better resistance to environmental stress, as mentioned, and plants that can physically just hold more weight as well. So that's one thing that we do love, because as I've noticed in my growing career, guess what? If a plant starts drooping and falling over, the swell kind of stops because it goes, well, I can't hold it up anymore.
It's literally sending back signals saying,
don't do this anymore.
We're going to break.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that I definitely noticed, which I always became a big fan of, not only Slicium, but also that coupled with trellising in cannabis.
And like you like to say, oil weighs more than plant material.
So get ready.
We want to stack on that oil.
Exactly.
It's heavy.
As you can see, all these things and all these three products, and this is really what we talk about, bringing in and making it a synganic program, right? You can take these bases, regardless of what base you're using, whether you're using our bases, New Millennium bases, Scietetics bases, which we do have. Just as so you remember, we do have both salts and liquid commercial grade available, and we even put out how many? There was something like 30 some totes going out, Josh, when you and I put out that video. So
55 gallon totes. Right?
So yeah, no, those are 1,000 liter, 250 gallon totes. 250 gallon totes. So there's, again, we do a lot of commercial work.
Customer bought up,
but also understand that we can put it on top of everything, and in fact, in a lot of ways, we really prefer to do that because we work really closely with a lot of different companies, have a lot of respect for a lot of different companies, totally understand that there's other companies that have done good work.
Even the companies we don't respect. Sauce your base.
Sauce your base. Even my point is we don't need the whole enchilada, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some guacamole. I'm going to give you some hot sauce. I'm going to give you some sour cream. Keep your beef, keep your whatever, but we are going to sauce this shit up.
There's been some good analogies.
We've been knocking this out. No, this has been good. But again, I really just wanted to go over everything again, real good, because I wanted people to understand like how easy it is to go from a pure salt system to a synganic program without it getting too mucky, too dirty, too whatever, but getting all the good parts.
As a wrap up, I love this analogy of the tacos. you can get a taco anywhere. What makes an amazing taco that you got versus a bunk ass grandma taco?
It's the sauce, man.
It's beef. It's maybe it's cheese, maybe it's not. It's a tortilla.
But what makes it good?
What makes it good?
The sauce, the queso, the freaking
all the stuff that when you're broke, you might say, "Well, I don't need
the guacamole. It's that $2 extra."
But when we're looking for those dank tacos,
I need the guac.
I'm going to need that guac.
I'm going to need the guac. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Appreciate it. Don't forget, we do have Rhizium, Slicium, and Fertilium all available on the website, jugdealers.net. Go check it out. Appreciate you guys. Until next time, from the Jug Den, thank you for listening. Peace.